All right, Bama fans, welcome back to the BamaOnLine YouTube show. We're going to do some recruiting today, but also some team. We've got some thoughts. Charlie Potter, Jimmy Stein have done a great job keeping us up to date. What's happened with the team? Kalen DeBoer's had a lot to say. We're also going to touch on recruiting, of course, bringing in Joseph Hastings, JoJo Hastings, as most of y'all know him, later on in the show. But right now, do us a favor before we get started. Please hit like and subscribe. We're trying to get to that $10,000 mark, and we're so close. $10,000 mark. That is not what they pay us, for the record. We're trying to get to the 10,000 subscribers. Andrew will back me on this. That is not what we make. But please like and subscribe if you want this content. We have a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun doing these shows. And of course, it's Tim Watts. We're here with Andrew Bone. And we're going to take off starting with the team. Andrew, give me some of your thoughts. Let's start with the Link documentary. I know both of us were talking about that. Give me some thoughts on that. We saw that it came out this weekend, I believe. Finally got a time to watch it. It was good enough that I watched it twice. What were your initial thoughts?
Um, Great recruiting tool. That was my initial thought when I watched it. I think that you know Coach DeBoer and that staff have certainly embraced this Lank mentality from last year. With Terrion Arnold and Jalen Milroe. Let all naysayers know. That was kind of the theme of last football season, but it carries over now. I mean, it's going to carry in. It's going to carry over for a long time. I mean, this is something that someone said in the documentary that this is a generational type thing. This is something that can carry over from, multiple sports. It's not just football. It's not just basketball. You're seeing the gymnasts. You're seeing softball players. You're seeing everybody kind of embrace that Lank mentality that Terrion Arnold and Jalen Milroe started. I also like the fact that they weren't just trying to make money for themselves. They tried to figure out a way, how can we make money for our teammates as well? And, that's going to carry over to different sports. So I really like the fact that we saw different people in the documentary, not just Nick Saban, not just Kalen DeBoer. You see, some of the most important people that are behind the scenes at Alabama, whether that's Courtney Morgan, Bob Welton, Ashley Kimball, Josh Chapman, and there's so many other people that weren't in the documentary that are very important pieces of this Alabama football program behind the scenes. But seeing those guys get some attention, I thought it was great. But overall, great documentary. But I would be sending that documentary to every recruit that's on our recruiting or on your recruiting board.
Yeah, I think it was really well done. The people they had on it, what they had to say, it felt genuine. It didn't feel like a recruiting tool, but it is a recruiting tool, in my opinion. I mean, you have guys coming in talking about how it started. I thought the best point of the whole thing was when Link started, Jalen Milroe wasn't nearly as big a name as he ended up being. I thought it was a great point. Terry Arnold was not. Now, I will say NFL guys did think Terry had first round potential, but he had to play into it, which he did. So it wasn't two popular guys kind of feeding off of that. It was two guys, almost like the perfect storm, the timing, and worked their way into it. But I thought it was well done. All right, we got football. We got literally football pads, people hitting each other, coaches yelling at players. We've seen it all. What are some of your thoughts, just general thoughts on what you've seen so far? And how surreal is it not to see Nick Saban? I mean, to see Nick Saban in a studio, but not on a football field. No cool hat, no griping, no, smart comments.
I think you look back to the spring, and when Coach DeBoer and his staff were first out there during spring practice, you start thinking about, is this real? Is this real life? That you have a new head coach, after the goat retires, and then you kind of get into fall camp. You're like, all right, it's real. This is a new team. This is a new coaching staff. What are they going to be able to do? And you start hearing, all the positive things that Coach DeBoer has said since the start of fall camp. He's seems very encouraged by this team. That they keep on getting better and better every single day, which is encouraging, and it's something that you want to hear. Um, Obviously, there's going to be some things that they're going to be watching pretty closely, some certain areas to try to develop. But it
Yeah.
seems for the most part that he's been pleased with everything that has happened these first few days, and we'll probably know a little bit more about the team later on this week, especially after that scrimmage come Saturday.
Tell you what I like's the energy. I like the social teams doing a good job of getting getting the images out. I thought the Sunday tweet they had was fantastic. The soundtrack, hats off to the social team doing a good job. But the energy, seeing coaches yell, seeing Christian Robinson jump, up and run out on the field, Kane Womack hollering at people, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff that we're kind of used to. Seeing
Mhm.
Freddie Roach hands on with the defensive line. That's one thing that we have to talk about is for 4 years, Bama fans, a decent portion of the Bama fans have griped about the defensive line recruiting. And we said early on when Kane Womack got here, that was his favorite room. And we're
Mhm.
continuing to hear that into the fall practice. Kalen DeBoer was talking about it yesterday. They're doing new things. It's a deep room. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of competition. So kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I mean that's been the one area that Alabama keeps mentioning. Coach DeBoer's mentioned how excited he is about that group, and I mean it is talented. It's deep. I mean you have guys that are coming back, but it's not just your first group, it's your second group, it's your third group. I mean these are a lot of hungry guys. Tim Smith, really excited about him
Yeah.
because there's been these high expectations for Tim Smith ever since he was in high school, and got on the field as a freshman, got on the field as a sophomore. Now he's starting to really pick things up, and I think he's going to be a big impact player. Jamarian Latham, kind of taking over that bandit role, making an impact there. So really excited about this overall defensive line group. And as you said, people always kind of gripe about the defensive line. Well, they've developed this group really well. I mean, you look at Tim Keenan. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a guy that, out of
Yeah.
Birmingham, an in-state kid that has, kind of waited his turn, but has been an impact player and is going to have an impact this season.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing I'd like to see is the quarterbacks throw. And I mean, it's a small sample that we're seeing, but we're seeing the reports as well about Jalen's throw looks improved. Look, Ty's always had a nice throw. He's always been a nice throw. And Jalen kind of went from a really smooth thrower in high school. He muscled up and it looked a little bit more like he was muscling the ball. But you can see the impact these quarterbacks are having, that Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan are having with these quarterbacks. And there's just a lot of excitement for me to see what this offense is going to do. It's so exciting. We'll be at the opening game. I got tickets this weekend. We usually try to go to a big game, but everybody wanted to see Kalen DeBoer's first game because I think I'm extremely excited to see what this offense can do.
Yeah, and you got to feel good about Jalen's progression. I mean, Coach DeBoer said it on Sunday that he saw Jalen throw his two best balls that he's seen throw since he's been at Alabama, especially the deep ball. So
Yeah.
he's continuing to get better, continuing to get comfortable in this offense, continuing to learn this new system, and there's a lot of high expectations for Jalen this year. But you also have to have confidence in the guys that are behind Jalen, and those guys seem to be getting a lot of reps, seem to be working hard. But obviously, this is as of right now is Jalen's show, and I think he's certainly been proving to the coaches and probably to a lot of his teammates that he can get the job done.
Yeah, BamaOnLine, we've had a lot of discussion on the round table, our message board. Fans are great there. They're very excited about everything going on. Again, Charlie Potter and Jimmy Stein, we had great video, great photos, great feedback, and all that. But I don't think anybody, talk about a short, I don't think it takes much more than a short sample size to get excited about one guy, and that's Ryan Williams, right? Like he could give us one pass, one catch, one route. He can dance in the background. He can do a TikTok video, and you get excited.
Yeah, I think when you enter fall practice, what does everybody want to know? How good do the freshmen look? Who's going to make an impact right away? And Ryan Williams, he's not the only one, but Ryan Williams certainly one of those guys that continues to stand out. Jamarcus Shepard has really praised him for not only his skills but his maturity out there on the field. Being out there training all summer, getting acclimated to everything. This is a guy that he didn't arrive like everybody else in his recruiting class in December. It seemed like he arrived late. He got there in May, so started training with the team a little bit later, but has really started to pick up on things. Has starting to understand different motions, different sets, and that's what's been really key for him. Obviously, the wide receiver room is. It's I guess the best way to say it is it's deep. There's a lot of guys, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of guys that are really looking to try to make that impact, and it's going to be hard to keep Ryan off the field. I think. I mean, they've got a really good group. but Ryan's going to be a special talent, whether it's this year or here in the future.
Yeah, I agree. We're not talking one of the guys I thought was had the potential to be the biggest impact transfers maybe in the nation was Jeremy Bernard. I mean, we haven't really talked about him. I know how good he looked in the spring game. I mean, you get caught up in the discussion with Ryan and Caleb, like you said, because a lot of us that cover, we love recruiting. So naturally we want to see, did the 5-star play like a 5-star, even though he's a month on campus or 6 months on campus. So we do that. But Jeremy Bernard's a guy I'm watching this year. I've got him bookmarked. I think he's potentially a first-round draft pick when all's said and done. Talent wise and everything that's there. I mean, again, Washington had a great group last year where they have first, second, and third round picks or something like that, 3 of the top 80 or 100, whatever it was. Certainly a good job, but it's exciting. It's exciting seeing the quarterback's going to work itself out, but knowing the talent they've got around them. And we don't even talk about the running backs. That's how like sexy the wide receiver and quarterback position is. Because Justice Haynes, aren't we ready to see this guy run?
Yeah, I think he's ready to see himself run. Yeah, this is a guy that's been
Absolutely.
waiting his turn. He's he's got an engine that doesn't stop. It's kind of like when a few years ago when Derrick Henry was ready to be unleashed, and he finally got unleashed in that Oklahoma playoff game, and
Yeah,
you kind of saw it. You're like, oh man, he's going to be
we
great
did.
next season. So now you're really excited about
We're
Justice
here.
Haynes. And it's a great group, especially those top three guys right now with Haynes, with Jam Miller. Richard Young's going to be a tough guy to tackle, especially if he's running third. When you run
That's
Jam
crazy.
and Justice Haynes in there over and over and over, and then you got to tackle Richard Young. I mean, you got to be excited about this offense overall because you're going to have a great offensive line, going to have a really good group of wide receivers. But you're also going to have your backs and obviously your quarterback. So it's going to be an exciting offense for Coach DeBoer, Nick Sheridan to work with in this first year. Jamarcus Shepard and those guys. I mean, the offense that they had last year at Washington was obviously pretty special with some, high end talent, but they got a lot of high end talent on this year's team as well. And I think they're tickled to death about, being able to use those guys.
Yeah, and Richard Young's funny. I have a buddy who's more of a baseball fan who's a member of BOL just because we known each other for years. And he sent me, he doesn't really love college football, but he sent me one of the pictures from BOL of Richard Young and said, no way this guy's your third team running back. And I was like, maybe fourth. I don't even know. You know what I mean? Like he was just amazed at the size and everything he looked back. And I agree with what you said. There is a lot of talent. And I think this staff knows it. When you see them talk, uh, not that Washington didn't have talent, but I think the depth wise and the length, you go from 1 to 85. I think it's a lot better than they had, probably at Washington, and they're seeing that. And still got Caden Proctor working into the left tackle. You've got Pritchett's in there battling and Wilkin-Formby. So a lot going on with that. And we're about to bring in Joseph Hastings. We're going to see if we can bring him in. It's the first time we've did the trifecta. But we want to remind you to like and subscribe. The more you like, the more you subscribe. We can get Andrew a hat with an actual logo on it. Right now, he's doing the no logo,
Yeah, man, I'm good.
that no logo hat. But do us a favor. Let's welcome in Joseph Hastings with the boom,
There we
boom.
go.
Nobody's applauding. I did it.
No,
Nobody's get. Okay, whatever.
we got you.
Is it here?
Why are we all wearing black? What's happening? We don't even coordinate this. We look like we're all. Well, welcome in Joseph Hastings. Joseph is our youngster who does a fantastic job with me and Andrew, one of our favorite guys in the world. He's stepping in and hanging out with us. He's about to go to Europe for the first time on Wednesday, so he found the time to come in here, talk a little recruiting. I know he's excited about that. And as always, we appreciate you, Joseph. Welcome in. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how's it going? So JoJo on the road is going to be in Europe. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited, but ready to talk some recruiting and some things going on recently. Even though it's not in the 2025 class, got some things to talk about.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll go straight into recruiting. We've been talking about team, but Alabama landed not one, but two 2027 prospects. I'll have some thoughts on this later on and in the state of Alabama. So they've got two coming in the state of Alabama. Barack Willis from Moody, Alabama. Kid, it's funny thing about him is I saw him. I can't remember 7th grade. I've had a parent who had a kid on his team send me his video and said, "Look, I'm not a recruiting scouting guy, but this guy looks special." It was in my inbox for a few weeks before I clicked on it. He was he was pretty outstanding, as you can imagine, as a seventh grader. So he commits to Alabama, and also Jamaris Guerin, who is Guerrer, who is a much bigger name probably nationally. His list of offers was pretty extensive on a national list. But Andrew, you talked to Willis's coach, who we are very familiar with, and tell us a little bit about that discussion and who his coach is.
Yeah, so Barack Willis, I personally had been covering recruiting 6 years before he was born. So that kind of makes you feel a little bit old in this profession. But Barack Willis, he's coached by Jake Gaines,
Yeah.
who was a star at Chelsea High School, played at the University of Georgia. Guy that we're familiar with. We did interviews with when he was in high school. So, catching up with him, talking about Barack, his skill set. And obviously, this is a 27 guy. This is a guy that's going to be going into his sophomore year this year. But I talked to Jake, and he, really praised him for his maturity. He said, he seems more like a freshman going into college than he does a sophomore in high school right now. I mean, that's how mature he is. His approach to everything, his training. He's 6'3", 228 pounds right now. Now he's looking right now. Alabama's looking at him more so at that wolf position, but as a sophomore in high school, you're probably going to grow a little bit over the course of the next couple of years. So they're going to watch that closely, kind of see how he develops and just see where his game goes. Jake believes he can get a little bit taller, but Jake also coached at Thompson High School for several years, and he coached Jeremiah Alexander. He coached Peter Woods. He said Barack's bigger than Peter Woods was when Peter was a freshman in high school. He's about the same size as Jeremiah Alexander. Compares him a lot to Jeremiah as far as what he can do out there on the football field. Believes he's a future 5-star, but had a lot of praise about him. Going to have a great interview with Jake on BOL later this week, so be sure to check that out. But yeah, one of the first in-state commitments for Alabama, or he was the first commitment in that 27 class for Alabama, and then a couple days later they get Jabarius Gar.
Yeah, if anybody knows linebackers, it's going to be Jake Gaines. He played at UAB. The program shut down. He went to Georgia, ended up at Thompson with Mark Freeman. Has coached some really good football players. Went to Moody, got a head coaching job at Moody again, and got Willis. So the one thing Willis is getting is good coaching. Physically, he's advanced. I mean, if you got his social media working out without in his regular gym clothes out of a football, he looks like a monster. He is a big guy. I think he could grow into that bandit, like you said. You don't really know at this stage. Sometimes kids quit growing at 15. Sometimes they are growing up to 18, 19, years old. I would guess he's still got a little bit in him, especially though he can carry more weight. All right, Joseph, you had a good interview this week. You've talked to us about Jabarius. Tell us a little bit about Jabarius, some of your thoughts from the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I got to talk with Jabarius back in the spring after he got his offer from Alabama. And there's some interviews you do where you kind of know that a prospect may be leaning one way or the other. And from that initial interview, he said it. His coach said it. He's been an Alabama fan for a long time, since he was 7 years old. His grandmother was a big fan of Alabama. So that just kind of carried over to him. And he's been rooting for the Crimson Tide. So when he got that offer in March, it really meant a lot to him. And took a couple more visits to Bama, was in attendance for the A-Day game, visited for a camp back on May 30th, and then went to that Champions Cookout, the same cookout that Barack Willis attended, and that pretty much sold him on the Crimson Tide, and he knew that he wanted to go to Alabama. He also wanted to be 100% locked in on his sophomore season. It's a big year for him because you look at his stat sheet, he recorded 32 total tackles, 7 sacks, I believe, or eight sacks and 7 tackles for a loss. And that was after missing the first 5 games of the season. He had to sit out for them. So this is a big year coming up for him. He's the face of the program. Micah DeBose transferred out. So really excited to see him this sophomore season. And he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, I know there's been discussion taking guys this young, but if you're taking 2027 guys or underclassmen, these are the two. These are two of the guys that you can risk. This isn't something where we hope he grows 3 inches or he's got to get faster. These are the kind of guys that you're looking to. We understand still a couple years away. But to be honest, the 2025 class, said this several times, this is a long way for them to sign. And with the portal, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there's not like anything locked and loaded. But I do say I think the biggest factor for me with these two guys and what you both touched on is being lifelong Bama fans, which is funny to say about a 15-year-old, right? It's funny to say they're lifetime fans, but they grew up, that with appreciation. Obviously that a lot of those people will follow in Nick Saban, but to see that carry over to Kalen DeBoer, Courtney Morgan, hey, speaking of having a good year, Christian Robinson, I mean, the Wolf position, we're hearing about it in 26. Couple of the best in Justin Hill and Dawson Merritt committed in 25, and now he's got guys committing in the 2027 class. So he's certainly having a big impact. Yes, we got Lockett coming up. Let's get a little thoughts on that. We'll start with Andrew. I don't think we have to touch on it too long, but Khalil Lockett, the Texas wide receiver, who Alabama really hasn't been that involved with, and Keelan Russell committed. He took an official visit. So Andrew, give us some thoughts from there.
Yeah, so Khalil Lockett's going to announce his decision on August the 7th. We talked about him. We really started talking about him in mid-June. I mean, that's kind of the first time we ever really talked about Khalil Lockett because he decided to set up an official visit to Alabama. It was kind of out of nowhere, but he had mentioned that Keelan Russell had reached out to him, that he wanted him to visit Alabama, go check things out. And he had been recruited a little bit by Alabama. Jamarcus Shepard had gone out and seen him earlier in the year, so there was a little bit of a relationship that had started. He just had not ever been able to make it to Tuscaloosa. So he ends up making the trip to Alabama in mid-June. Alabama, Texas kind of been that top two schools for him. Some other schools also involved, including Florida State, Texas A&M, but LSU. But I don't think that it's going to be one of those programs that seems like it's been an Alabama-Texas battle. In-state kid for Texas has been pushing hard, for a long time. Alabama has 2 wide receiver commitments, and we talked about this at the beginning of the year. That was kind of the number. After Alabama was able to get Ryan Williams to reclassify, Caleb Odom ends up moving from tight end to wide receiver. They really didn't need a big wide receiver class in 25. So getting at least 2. If 3 came along and worked out, then they would take 3. But I think they're pretty happy with the 2 that they've got. Khalil Lockett wanted to jump on board. No way they're going to say no to him. But in my opinion, I do think, and I think it's a collective opinion that we feel like Texas is probably in the driver's seat.
I think the thing with Khalil, so you get Latzir Brooks, who obviously we think the 3 of us think is one of the elite players in the country. Still think there's a lot of meat on the bone with his ranking potentially. Then you get Caleb Cunningham. We've got our RPMs in, we got our predictions in. So we get to that point. Bama fans started, even though we told them 2 wide receiver commitments was the goal. Then it was, can you not just 3, can you take 4? Can you get Derek Meadows? Can you get Malik Lockett? That kind of get everybody mentality, which also happened on the offensive line where they had a great offensive line. We've seen that transfer to the defensive line as well, where we said they were taking probably 3 guys. They didn't expect a lot of guys. They've got 2 committed right now. One we're about to talk to with Joseph. They got London Simmons, who we're extremely happy to, excited to see this year as a senior. He's 40 pounds lighter. And we got Steve from Canada, who's at junior college in Summit, Mississippi. Joseph had a great interview this week. Joseph, tell us a little bit about Steve and everything going on with him and what his coaches have been saying.
Yeah, so I know most Alabama fans who follow recruiting have probably seen the recent photo of Steve. And look, he's 6'4", 280 plus pounds, benching over 500 pounds, 5 to 6 reps. That's what he told us, and that's what his coach told us. So we're going to go with what they said there. And he looks the part physically. He's going to play a little bit inside and outside for Southwest Mississippi Community College this season. Their season begins on August 29th. And the good thing is they play on Thursdays for the most part. So Alabama's expected to see him at some point during the year. But they're continuing to do that evaluation of him just in terms of how he's progressed physically. He's put on nearly 30 pounds this year. So he's continuing to grow. And there's just a lot of excitement with Steve. And there's a lot of excitement on his end for this Alabama staff. He really praised the coaching staff for what they've done, what they've put together, both on the recruiting trail and what he's seen in terms of their practices, how the culture has been kept the same and the standards. So that was a really great interview with Steve. And look, he's got a great mentality. He's got an absolutely fantastic mentality for everything that he went through, signing in that Bama 2024 class, but having to go to JUCO, before he gets to Alabama. He didn't really sound like there was much of a letdown. He's approaching this with a positive spirit. Every single day he's going in there early. One of the first guys in, and is working on his English, working on his skill set, working on everything. So really great conversation with him.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion because Steve is from Quebec City in Canada. They speak a lot of French. I looked it up. 50% speak French there. Steve couldn't pass the written test, is what is explained to us. It's not he can't communicate and discuss. I mean,
And
I'll be
his English
honest.
sounded fine. His English sounded fine. I heard. I
Yeah,
mean, outside of some bad signal issues, I heard pretty much everything that he communicated everything effectively.
I wonder how many just average people could pass that test with English. I know I'd be sitting in Quebec City right now. I'd be trying to sneak over here. You guys pick me up in New York,
And you go back to his announcement when he announced on in December. He announced it. The announcement was in French. He announced in
Yeah.
French, which was very unique and cool. But it also he wanted to pay respect to his community and
Sure.
but it was also the language that he's kind of grown up on. So I think he's gonna be all right.
He
Yeah.
told me it's pretty funny. He said during the interview, he's like, there's some things that I'm hearing in Mississippi that I really don't understand. It's pretty different than the English in Alabama, and definitely different than the English in Canada.
Yeah, that's going to end up being a good story, we think. So we're heading into this, Alabama's 2025 class, still waiting on AK Deer. I think a lot of people have misunderstood. AK never set a date. We just knew when Alabama was trending. We put in an RPM pick and a prediction we still feel comfortable with, but he never set a date, so he's not behind anything. These guys, you get used to them just announcing at your own time. I mean, the fans aren't used to what we are, but there's stuff we're expecting to drop Monday at 6 p.m. that hasn't dropped Thursday at 11 a.m.
Right.
Things come up that, an edit, or they can't do this, or their mom couldn't get off work. So AK's not behind. So there's not a lot of guys really left on the board. And just sort of give us your thoughts just in general. And Joseph, we'll get to you as well. What are your thoughts on how this process will play out from here through December 4th?
I think the biggest thing right now is you got to hang on to the guys that you have committed right now, and they're like we've said, there's not a lot of targets that are still out there. You still have your AK Deers, but looking at the entire offense, I mean, AK Deer is kind of like the only guy that's out there besides somebody like a Khalid Lockett. You look on the defense side of the ball, what are you going to do on the defensive line? We saw today Justice Terry came out and said he's going to wait until December to announce the decision. Ty Jackson's another guy that we're going to watch, but he's going to wait until December to make a decision. Number one linebacker in the class, and then defensive back wise, are you going to be able to get a safety in this class? There's no safeties right now, so those are kind of the only positions you're really kind of watching and waiting for. But everybody's in practice mode. Football teams, Alabama teams in practice mode. High school players are in practice mode. They're getting ready for the start of their senior season. You got an entire season to kind of recruit guys, bring them on campus. I mean, think about some of the big games Alabama's going to have in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to bring a lot of guys in for games, guys that are committed elsewhere, or guys that they're going to evaluate this upcoming season. So there's a long way still to go until that December 4th early signing period.
Yeah. Jessica, what are your thoughts? We're heading in here just generally, what the approach is. Because, I think a lot of this was, and I mess with my buddies because they're like, give me commitment. And they just had a run from Keelan till, who was the last one? Haywood? Who was the last one? Caleb?
Ty Haywood, yeah, July 14th.
All right. So we just go from that run, and, the coverage was, all kind of coverage going on. Todd's like, once they fill up, they're full. Like, y'all can't make 3 extra spots because you want them. You're not a kid at Toys R Us screaming for another toy. So, Joseph, give us your thoughts on the pace we had in June, slowed down now, and then the closeout through December.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo those same sentiments with Bone. That Bone said, talking about holding on to your current commits. There's some guys who have talked about taking visits elsewhere this season. Obviously, we're going to be paying attention to those, which games they get out to, how often they visit Alabama themselves versus how often they're on other schools' campuses. So that's one thing to pay attention to. Another thing I'm looking at, too, is senior season evaluation. You never know if a guy may pop up on the radar. Nothing can ever be ruled out with that. Just in terms of a guy having a really great senior year and bursting onto the scene. We've seen that a few times with some top prospects over the past few years. So that's one thing too. And also the positions that Bone had mentioned too, looking at safety, looking at that running back position, what's going to go on there with AK Deer, how long he decides to take this out. We know that he intends on visiting for a few Alabama games this season. So, we're going to be watching those top targets and then also potentially anyone else who emerges.
I'll tell you this for a fact. Somebody's going to emerge this year. A 3-star where they've overthought how fast he was. Is he fast enough? Jahmyr Gibbs.
Mhm.
Jahmyr Gibbs did this. I mean, you look back, Eddie Jackson did this. So there's guys coming off injuries like Eddie Jackson did, right? He was injured junior year, didn't get a good look. Senior year, he's everything you wanted to be. Went to the NFL's done well there, had a good career at Alabama with a few injuries. Jahmyr Gibbs, nobody was really recruiting despite how successful he was his first 3 years. And then his senior year, let's be honest, his senior year, the school still didn't push for him like they should. There's a lot of talent that's emerging because when you get to June, you start, hey, he didn't camp, so we don't know how fast he is. But at the end of the day, we're coming down to the film portion of our program. College coaches watching film, and I think that's where some of these guys are going to stand up and start out and really do a good job. So we're going to be watching it closely. I echo y'all's thought at safety. I don't know who they're getting at safety, but they'll get somebody at safety, whether it's the portal, whether it is an Eddie Jackson, whether it's a flip. Now, we don't want to start the rumor, but they will be working a lot of guys quietly, keeping it from us, keeping it from everybody. They'll quietly be working, guys to flip, just like people be working to flip their commitment.
And then all of a sudden you see them sneak in for a game. We saw that last year with Bubba Hampton. Bubba Hampton committed to Texas.
Yeah.
Well, that was late July when he committed to Texas. Late June or late July, I can't remember. But he snuck into Tuscaloosa. I think we were all Joe was all over it, but he ended up making it. What was that? The Arkansas or Tennessee game? He was in.
Yeah, it was October.
Did not want anybody to know he was there. I'm like, it's going to be hard to not know that, somebody of your caliber is on campus walking around on the sideline. But he kept that extremely quiet and kept saying that he was solid with Texas throughout the entire process. And then obviously flipped to Alabama. But, that happens just about every single recruiting cycle. We're not saying it's going to happen this year, but things like that can happen. So you got to wait and kind of see who decides to sneak in for a game. Because if Alabama has a lot of success, especially early on in the season, there's going to be more kids that are going to be thinking, I got to get to Tuscaloosa and go see it for myself in person.
And Bone, kind of piggybacking off of that, look, the regular season ends on November 30th. The early signing period begins on December 4th. I mean, that's a quick turnaround. If Alabama ends the season on a very strong note, and they're one of the top teams in contention for the playoffs, that gives them a lot of momentum heading into that December 4th signing period. And we know, there's obviously a lot, battles there with Auburn. So,
what's that last home game before the early signing period?
It's Auburn.
The Iron Bowl. So there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be at that game that weekend.
Last year's schedule was not very good for visitors, right? The home games they had wasn't very good. This year's out, they've got great road games as well. It's a hell of a schedule, but they also have great, you get Georgia. People that not even looking at Alabama closely at the time will visit for that game or will want to visit for that game. And hey, the one thing we've known this staff has done really well going back to the spring is they know how to host visitors. I don't think they're scared. I think going back to that, they're genuine, good discussion, good dudes. I guess some people would say they're dudes. I think that goes in. Plus with the support staff, Joseph, have you seen the documentary Link yet? I don't know if you've had a chance. We discussed this earlier.
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah, it's a good watch, but we're talking about some of the people that don't get enough credit for the stuff they do. Josh Chapman had a good role, Bob Welton, Ashley Kimball, Courtney Morgan gets a lot of the press, obviously, and does a good job and deserves it. But there's a lot of people back there that help. It's just not a head coach hanging out with the recruiter or the family. These moms, especially, they bond with a lot of people there. I mean, Josh, Andrew and I covered Josh Chapman when he was in high school. He flipped from Auburn. One of Nick Saban's flipped from Auburn to Alabama. One of the first flips, Auburn to Alabama, and ended up playing on the national championship team and had a really good career. Well, all right. We appreciate you guys. We're going to wish Joseph good luck in Europe. Appreciate you guys and gals. We can't forget the ladies who do a great job on the round table of representing themselves and asking good questions and blending in with the crowd. But do us a favor, like and subscribe. Me and Andrew will be here. We're not going to Europe. Joseph did not invite either of us. That's whatever.
We tried. We tried.
No, when me and Andrew go to Europe, we're not inviting you. We're just sending you a lot of photos in our Speedo, so you can get ready for our European thong tour. But we appreciate we appreciate everybody who watches into the show. Appreciate Andrew, Joseph, Charlie Potter, Jimmy Stein, all the BOL staff. We have a good time together. It's not just an act for YouTube. We're always talking trash, texting each other, working together. Everybody's on the same page. So we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you later in the week. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys, girls.